Well, as prices keep on climbing, the White House wants to keep on spending. The president this week meeting with energy executives in an effort to jumpstart his stalled climate agenda and stumping in Virginia for his nearly $2 trillion Build Back Better plan. This is Democrat Joe Manchin continues to pour cold water on the plan, saying that his party, quote, Congress and the administration must proceed with caution before adding more fuel to the economy that's already on fire. As inflation and our $30 trillion in national debt continue a historic climb, only in Washington, D.C. do people seem to think that spending trillions more of taxpayer money will cure our problems, let alone inflation. Let's bring in our panel, Wall Street Journal columnist Kim Strassel, editorial board member Kyle Peterson, and columnist Mary Anastasia O'Grady. I'm not sure why it seems like Joe Manchin and perhaps a few others who aren't as vocal are the only ones who get it. How do you square the idea that President Biden keeps pushing the notion that spending more money will cure inflation?
Well, he's only got two things that he continues to say all the time. One is that, inflation is transitory. We just need to work through some supply chain chinks out there. And then also, we need to spend more. And the reality is the first of those notions, it's wrong. If you look at these latest inflation numbers, we're seeing numbers creep up even in places like services, which last I looked, services aren't sitting on some cargo ship outside of L.A., but also spending. This is one of the root problems. Right now, by some estimates, the United States federal government is spending $1 out of every $4 in the country. That money is still washing into the economy. States have not worked through the money that the Fed's already sent to them, and they're still handing it out. And this is behind inflation. Yeah. And the president hasn't come up with a better message because to do so would require changing his agenda, and he doesn't want to do that.
You know, Mary, the other blame game part of the blame game is corporate greed. The White House and a lot of other prominent Democrats are saying, look at the profits. You know, we're in the middle of earnings season right now. Tyson Foods just had record earnings, and it's pretty clear they're saying that that's a form of profiteering. What do you say?
Well, that's a little bit of a pivot from what Joe Biden's been saying for the last couple of months, which is, you know, workers are getting higher wages. Look, workers are getting raises. And he has a problem now, especially as he heads out into the country meeting with people, and that is that inflation is gobbling up those wage gains. So year over year for January, workers actually hourly earnings were down 1.7%. So as fast as companies start paying their workers more, inflation is eating up their gains, and he's not going to want to face that, and it's going to be much tougher when he's, you know, out there meeting people. He says he's going to start pressing the flesh, and I don't think he's going to meet a very friendly crowd.
No, I don't either. And Kyle, so you know, he's got the blame game. And that's, I don't think it's going to work. Certainly, to Mary's point, as folks some on the lower end are getting the biggest pay raises, 16 to 24, and the lowest quintile, they're seeing pretty strong pay wages. And sometimes some months do keep up with inflation, not every month. But to attack these corporations is wrong. So what's left for this White House?
Well, that's the question. I mean, I agree. I find it astounding that President Biden was out in Virginia this week pitching Build Back Better, standing in front of a big Build Back Better banner. And you said it was a $2 trillion plan. I think that's generous accounting. Yeah. Some people say it's more like $3 or $4 trillion when you add it all up. But the alarming thing, I think, for the White House is that this is the 8th month now where we have inflation year over year at over 5%. And the risk is that it starts to build into people's expectations. It starts to build into union contracts when they get renegotiated. And it starts to build into people's negotiations with their bosses. When they hit their end of their fiscal year, they're going to point to the inflation figures and say, you know, come on, boss, you got to give me more than that to at least keep my standard of living the same or give me a little bit of a raise. And so far, Biden hasn't seemed to want to move on that. And he just renominated the Fed chair. So there doesn't seem to be any push on his end to change any of the Fed's policies either.
Yeah, I mean, Kim, that was a big guessing game. For a moment there, it looked like Powell was not going to be renominated by President Biden. You wish you were a fly on the wall. You wonder what the Faustian deal happened behind closed doors there. But having said that, President Biden has thrown Powell under the bus, so to speak, and he's blaming it all on the Federal Reserve. And so maybe that's his only outcome election time. Hey, it wasn't us, it was the Fed.
Well, he's got to find someone to blame, as you said. And most Americans aren't buying the argument that it's greedy corporations. They know it has to do with Washington. So the next thing he can do is say, I'm going to blame the Fed. I think there's a problem with that, though. I mean, one is that most Americans don't automatically think of the Fed. Many people don't even know what it is. They understand instead a direct line between them and their elected representatives and the people who are in charge politically. So that's one problem. But also, as Kyle mentioned, he wrapped his arms around the guy who's in charge of the Fed at the moment and the people who are making the decisions. It's going to be very tough. He's going to try it, but it's going to be very tough to point fingers and say, you know, those guys did it and it's their fault, nothing to do with me. It's his guy over there.
Mary, I got 30 seconds, but it is interesting that this same week, a lot of proponents of a modern monetary theory, essentially the notion that the government can print unlimited amounts of money, tried to take a victory lap. How do you, I just find that amazing in the midst of this inflation battle as well.
Well, I wouldn't expect them to, wave the white flag and surrender. But I think that in the months to come, I mean, there's a bigger problem looming, which is that if the Fed really does what it needs to do, which is jam on the brakes here, I mean, you could end up tipping the economy into a recession. So that's the plank that's the line they're trying to walk, and it's going to be very tough.
Yeah, it really is. Jay Powell's got a job nobody wants right now. Thank you all.